Because we hit 70,000 subscribers on YouTube, we've got a special guest. Well, it's the same guest that's here once a month to answer your questions. Dan Titus is here. We're talking fantasy basketball questions, mailbags. It's all happening. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I'm full of sugar spice and everything nice. And I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok, at redrock_bball, and on Instagram, at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We are here to answer your questions. But before I do that, I'll tell you that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Also, thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. That's enough of that, because now we do have to talk. We're going to bring him in. He's back. A few weeks ago, Dan was on here and we talked a lot of fantasy basketball, and we're here to do it again. Dan Titus, welcome back.
What's up, Josh? How you doing, man?
Happy
good. Holidays.
I'm good, man. Happy holidays to you as well. We're getting very close to Christmas, like 10 days away from Christmas, which is a little weird. It always sneaks up on you because you always think end of the month, but no, it's a week before the end of the month. But that doesn't matter. We're here to talk fantasy basketball, and we're here to answer people's questions. We might as well just bang straight into this one. Dylan says, what do you think about Patrick Williams' value with respect to other waiver wire players? Is he worth keeping over a hurt Keontae George or a Jalen Green? Jalen Green is in that waiver wire pool of players now, I guess. So I guess we'll look at that as Patrick Williams. Where are you? Like, obviously, Dan, he's really inconsistent. He flashes, a steal, a block a game sometimes, and then he has 4 points, or he'll have 15 points. I'm probably on the side of I'll hold, but it really depends on what else is popping on the waiver wire. Like, would I have Jalen Green over him? Probably. Would I have injured Keontae George? I don't think I'd hold Keontae through an injury in that scenario, but how do you view Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I think Patrick Williams is what he is. I think he's a better fantasy player whenever Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan are off the floor. So you still have a few weeks before Zach LaVine returns, and who knows what happens in the trade market. But I think Pat Williams is somebody that you don't need to hold. He's definitely decent for stocks, steals and blocks, but I would be open to moving him for a player like any of those three Warriors that you've been talking about a lot, in Kuminga, Dario Saric, and Brandon Podziemski. I think even Tari Eason is becoming more interesting now. Now with 2 consecutive double-doubles and having great games. So I'm okay to keep him, but I also wouldn't be afraid to drop him if there's somebody more attractive out there.
Well, that's a fantastic segue from you, Dan, because Twaster says, just combining all this together, who would you prioritize, Kuminga or Eason?
I think I would go with the guaranteed minutes, which it looks like it would be Kuminga. But, man, we were talking about this last year, and the upside of what Tari Eason can do, and he's shown it on a per-minute level. Just give him the opportunity, man, and he's fantasy gold. He does everything for you. The thing about Jonathan Kuminga that I just want to temper expectations for is that, like, when he plays, he's typically just a points and rebounds guy. He doesn't really fill out the rest of the box score. So he is going to get more minutes, and he has played well in those minutes. But I think it's going to be interesting to see which Warrior pops from this Draymond Green fallout.
Yeah, like when I was talking about this yesterday with the Warriors, I was like, okay, the Draymond thing is fine. They might just start Chris Paul, although there was reports that they might start Kuminga instead of Chris Paul. But the big thing is going to be what they do with Wiggins, because that's what really opened up a lot of stuff. Because if Wiggins plays 18 minutes or plays 20 minutes and comes off the bench, then that does open up Kuminga a lot more. It opens up Podziemski. It opens up Moses Moody. But last game, all that happened because Green got ejected. Clay got benched and Wiggins got benched, and Looney played like 10 minutes. Like, are all of those things going to happen? Maybe. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as clean as Green is out there for 26 for Podziemski, 30 for Kuminga, and 30 for Moody. Like, that just isn't going to happen. There's still a lot of other things to happen there. Whereas for Eason, what has led to those big minutes for him in the last 2 games has been 24 minutes from Jalen Green. In one of those, it was 9 minutes from Tate, and the other one, it was 24 minutes from Şengün, which both of those scenarios seem unrealistic. Like, they're just not going to be the case every night. And Eason played 9 first half minutes, and then he played the entirety of the final quarter and a big chunk of the third. Does that guarantee he gets 27 a night and they just keep Jalen Green in a 25-minute role? That seems also really unlikely. So I think we're going to be frustrated. I think we're going to be in a situation where it's going to be just an annoying scenario. I actually think I might take Eason over Kuminga, just his per-minute production, like you said with Kuminga. Right. Like, what does he do? Like, we want him to do more, but he doesn't as a general rule. And maybe he plays 5 more minutes, but maybe he doesn't also, because it does require a few of those other things going wrong. But it is definitely the biggest question, I guess, sitting around fantasy at the moment. Like, I don't think you'd argue with this, Dan, but all of those, like Kuminga and Eason, they should be grabbed by somebody, and probably Podziemski as well.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think all of those guys should be waiver ads at this point.
Yeah, like how to pick them, that is really tough. Like that's hard, and there's so many other factors involved in that, and there's even no guarantee that that stuff holds every single game. Angela says, are we holding Jordan Clarkson through the injury? Angela, I'm going to use this question as a quick, to just answer the part. Clarkson, no, I don't think you need to do that. But it also brings us into what do we do? Because Colin Sexton took the starting spot. I thought they would start Ochai Agbaji yesterday, Dan. They didn't. They went with Sexton. He scored well, and I'm okay with adding him when you're looking for some points. And what has happened when Clarkson is out and now George is out, he might get a couple more assists. I'm okay with adding Sexton in that scenario.
Yeah, I think that this is the point where you add Colin Sexton for a short-term value hold here. Like, it doesn't look like Keontae's injury is going to be, long-term by any means. It's an ankle sprain. But Jordan Clarkson isn't a must-roster guy. Like, he's always that outside 150 type of player, scores in bunches, can get some steals and threes, but, like, you're not really relying on him in category league. So I feel okay with dropping him and rolling with Sexton because he's the hot hand. And honestly, there's so many injuries, cluster injuries going on in Utah right now. You can get a lot of value out of some of these backups. And
they're really hard to predict as well. Utah is one of those teams that just seems to change things every single game, and that makes it really hard to figure out what they're going to do. Like, does Kessler play 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or does he start, or does Yurtseven start, or does Agbaji start, or Fontecchio start, or whatever? Like, it's impossible to sort of get it, and Memphis is probably worse at that than this, and that makes it really difficult to try and figure out exactly where we're going to do that. Now, I've given my thoughts on this, but BSN Highlights asks, do you expect Draymond to be suspended for more than 10 games, Dan?
I do. I think the fact that he got 5 last time, I feel like with all the past history, 10 games is the minimum at this point. I think we could be looking at 15. That was kind of what I was predicting, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was north of 20.
Yeah, my initial thing was 20. I thought my initial thing was I would think that he should get 20, and I think they would give him 10. But as soon as they come out and say suspended indefinitely, I know a lot of people are bringing up, well, look at all the past suspended indefinitely, and to me that just has no relevance whatsoever.
No,
it doesn't lean across whatsoever. For a start, one of them was Kyrie, and that was a Nets imposed suspension. But part of the Draymond thing and part of the reason that he got the 5 games last time was a history of infractions. It was like a build up of all this stuff. So it's not just like, hey, go and pass your counseling thing and show contrition and come back, because there's that part of it, which, hey, Ja Morant went to a wellness camp for 2 days and he was fine apparently, but that's a different situation. But there's also the punishment part of it. It's like, hey, we want you get some help, like figure this shit out. But there's also a punishment part where he has to serve minimum 5 after last time if they're going to add past transgressions on. So that's got to be, I would say, minimum 10, and then plus whatever the rehab-ish counseling thing on top of that. And yeah, I do think it's pushing at least 15 at this point, probably 20 games. And I'm guessing you're thinking you don't hold on to Draymond Green through that, do you?
No, I don't think you need to at this point. And I'd be more concerned about the bigger questions, like what do the Warriors do during this time? And I think we're going to start to see the young players play more. If they start to get some momentum, I've already seen questions coming up, like, does Draymond Green come back off the bench? So, like, there's a lot to still be figured out, but I feel like you can drop him right now. You can safely drop him.
The interesting thing with Draymond is obviously he's been suspended and ejected multiple times already this season. He hasn't been the problem, though, when he's been on the court. Like, he's been good. Like, him and Steph have been good. It's Clay that's been bad. It's Wiggins that's been bad.
Clay and Wiggins.
It's Looney. Yeah. Looney's been terrible. Like, Draymond has been quite good when he's been on the court. It's all those other guys that have sucked. So maybe they keep him on the bench, but if they're going to actually bench people to get best lineups in, it's the other guys that need to be seen reduced roles, especially Wiggins, who, I don't know, I feel sorry for him. There's something going on. There's something completely wrong with him at the moment, and I feel like he's going through a bunch of stuff, and if there's anyone who probably needs some time off for some counseling or something, it feels like it's him, because I don't know. It's weird to drop off as much as he has. But today's episode is brought to you by Dave. At one time or another, we all need a little financial help, and that is why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and help you build your credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is the banking app that is leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no fees. It's all part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money that you need with no interest and then settle up later. Extra cash gives you more money to buy groceries, fill your tank, finally get your car repaired, or catch up on bills without having to wait for your next paycheck. You can even build credit when you settle up on time. So download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That is dave.com/lockedonnba. You could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. All right. Again, we'll use these questions. Sometimes they're specific and we can extrapolate them into deeper stuff. And Penny Leaf says Josh's Jordan Poole are dropping 8-team leagues. So I'll just quick answer, Dan, yes or no?
8 teams? Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that you could pick up. So yeah, I could drop Jordan Poole.
I agree. In an 8-team league, you can drop him. It's obviously been dreadful. But that brings us to, I guess, the more wider audience of a 10-team and more specifically a 12-team league. What are you doing with Jordan Poole? Because obviously it's been terrible. There's been a couple of little signs of improvement and then it just goes back to the same stuff. Usage remains down. Field goal percentage is dreadful. Assist rate is low. It's been just a complete disaster to go from a guy who was very, very good 2 years ago to serviceable last year to honestly one of the worst players in the NBA at the moment. It's been a rapid fall. What are you doing if you had him in a 12-team league? To me, it's very dependent on where I am in the standings. If I'm sitting top 2 or top 3, I'm okay to just see what happens, right? Tyus Jones might get traded. Poole might be the starting point guard. Maybe that accelerates things. I don't know. There's not many guys that sit on your waiver wire in a 12-team format who do have that ability to be a 25-point scorer with 5 assists and go 4 of 4 from the line each night. And he's actually got his steals and blocks up this season. There's not many guys who have that ability on the waiver wire. The problem is Poole's nowhere near producing that. So who would you be adding? Like for a 2-game opportunity at a Dante Exum? Like that's fine, but yeah, that overall long-term upside with your top of the standings doesn't really do that much for you. If you're at the bottom, you've got to claw, scrounge, get whatever you can in at any point, and that's where I think the decision goes. Maybe it is best moving on because I don't actually have the time to wait anymore.
Yeah, I think you said that best. I would be holding if I'm at the top of the standings because, as you said, the upside there when he actually figures out how to be the 1A and not get, I don't know, seems like he's overwhelmed and still not focused. The Wizards situation's ugly in general. Like their team basketball is awful. Everyone's playing bad except for Kyle Kuzma and maybe Daniel Gafford when he's healthy. But I would hold on to him if you're at the top of the standings. If you're at the bottom, you're not going to be able to get a 1-for-1 for him. The value is not going to be there. So you're going to have to package him in with somebody else, probably a 2-for-1 or a 2-for-2 type of deal, someone that's better in the deal so that someone actually feels like there's someone worth and they can take the upside of Jordan Poole. Because you're not going to be able to get much for him on the trade market right now. So if I'm a bottom feeder, I would definitely be looking to move on because you just can't continue to stomach that and still try to gain that margin in the loss column or in the win column, I should say.
I don't want to cause any problems for you, Dan, but you live out in the Bay Area. How would you rate the baddies in the Bay Area versus in Washington? Is there a correlation there to Jordan?
There's 100% correlation there, man. Jordan Wall set or John Wall set the precedent for it. Like I used to live in DC. It's night and day, bro. Like he's having a great time, I'm sure.
There you have it. That's how we're drafting fantasy players on based on the BBLs per capita in the in the city that players live. Appad Trend says, is it worth buying low on Ja Morant? Right now, we do not know his conditioning in minutes first game back. I think there's something to this, Dan, but I don't think you could do it now. People have waited 20-odd games for him to come back. We're 2 games away, so you can't really buy low on him now. But what I do think will happen is the first game that he comes back, he might come off the bench. He might play 27 minutes. And it happened when he went to Florida to like sun his anus for 3 days down there at the wellness camp. And then he came back and he played off the bench. I want to disrupt things. Although the team is obviously dreadful. He's not disrupting anything at the moment. I think the first couple of games might be a little bit weird in terms of rotations or minutes. That's possible. So I think your buy low might open up there. Not now where the anticipation's like building. People go, I've waited all this time. He's coming back. And they're not going to go, well, you know what? I've waited all this time. Why don't you just have him for nothing? I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you're onto something that might happen next week.
Yeah, I'd be down to do it. As you said, like wait a week, maybe a week and a half, get some games in. He's going to be going through some conditioning and also getting that chemistry back. This team looks completely different than it did last year. So he's going to have to get his footing. So I would definitely wait a little bit if you're interested in Ja Morant. Just remember, he's typically a better real-life player than he is fantasy guy in category leagues. But that being said, with so many injuries in the Memphis's backcourt, they're going to need them in the worst way. And Desmond Bane's been awesome, but I think he's also going to also benefit from having to play off ball a little bit more. Maybe you see that assist rate go down a little bit, but I feel like it's going to be good for everyone in Memphis when Ja's back on the court, because right now they're just kind of treading above water, and getting somebody that could raise that floor up is going to help Jaren Jackson Jr., pretty much everybody else around.
As weird as it is to say with Ja Morant, but he's actually going to provide stability to that team, like, because they are just all over the shop. Like, everything is changing every single game. Minutes, shots, usage, whatever. It's all changing every game. And while there is all this turmoil for Ja off court, like, him coming back actually gives them a level of stability. Amin says, will I be sad if I don't trade Coby White? And again, this just brings to a fantasy basketball strategy thing. Coby White's dominating at the moment, Dan. He's hitting like 55% of threes. He's hitting 5 threes a game. He's playing 40 minutes a night. Will you be sad if you don't trade him? Well, that would depend. Is there someone in your league that will say, Coby White, this is an all-star player. Let's go top 30 on him. If you'd be sad if you didn't take that, but you probably can't get that. So whatever, like, you're just not going to, you try it, but you're probably not going to be able to turn it into something that's worthwhile. So just enjoy what is happening. If it works, it works. And then when he drops back off later on, whatever, you enjoyed the moment as it was going on. So it's not one of those, again, sell highs are never, you must get rid of this guy. It's about turning it for a trade that makes sense and rejecting stuff that doesn't. And I think that's a pretty strong lesson there, Dan.
Yeah, I'd be hard-pressed to want to send Coby White out. Yeah, he's on a ridiculous heater right now, but, like, considering where you drafted him, this guy's ADP was like north of 140, right? Like, he wasn't really on fantasy people's radar until like a late round pick. So you're getting extreme value right now. And I think I'd be more so looking at the signaling of what's going on in Chicago. Zach LaVine wants to be traded. A report came out today that he wants to go to the Lakers. We'll see where he ends up. But no matter the situation is, they invested in Coby White. They paid him in the offseason. So I think there's staying power. I'm thinking that he can stay. Like, I think he's a guy that you can keep on your roster, unless you're going to trade him for, an all-star level player. Then hold on to him.
Well, let me throw this hypothetical trade. I was just trying to think of names that might be worth discussing, because I think in 90% of cases you're just going to hold and see what happens. Yeah. But what if someone said, "Hey, do you want Darius Garland?" Where do you sit with that?
Garland hasn't even played his best yet, so I'm tempted. I'm tempted by that, because I think he offers more assists. It depends on what your team build is, obviously, but I would be tempted in Darius Garland.
I think that's probably the right area. Like, I'm not sure if, I'm not as big on DeJounte Murray, so to me, he's probably a little bit lower, even though the odds would suggest that DeJounte will be better than Coby rest of season. I think I'd rather just ride out what I'm getting. But with a Garland sort of scenario, that I'd probably be interested, like that Fred VanVleet maybe around that area. Like, that's, yeah, but if I can't get it, I can't get it. Like, but one thing, it's not even just about LaVine not being there with White, just to harp on Coby White. He's not going to do this. He's hitting 55% of threes, irrespective of who's around him. Like, it doesn't matter if Michael Jordan and the Monstars are playing next to him. He's not going to hit 55% of threes. Like, it's just not going to happen. So that's like when I talked to Shaden Sharp the other day. It's like, irrespective of who gets traded or not, they're not going to continue to go at these insane shooting levels. That is a guarantee to fall off, and that's not impacted by trades or anything along those lines. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's also the easiest and the most exciting way to play DFS. It is you against the numbers instead of going up against thousands of players and spreadsheets and formulas and salary caps and all the pros out there just looking to take your money. It's just you against a player projection. They get a stat, they put it up, you look at it, and you say more or less points, rebounds, assists, whatever, steals, blocks, fantasy points. They chuck it all up there. They might have Coby White in his threes, and they might say, well, do you think he's going to hit 4 in this game? And you say, well, I think he'll actually go more. So you go more. And you put 2 to 6 of those together into an entry, and you can win up to 25 times your money back. They even offer a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. No need to beg for voids on social media. You can just get it happen automatically on PrizePicks. Football and basketball, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, the player gets rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedonnba and enter the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/lockedonnba. The code is LOCKEDONNBA and you get a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. Ignacio, I'm just going to quickly answer this. Is Brogdon a hold in 18 points league? 100% no. Zoe says, is Evan Mobley's knee injury a serious concern? Initially, I would have said no, but now I'm saying, yeah, I'm a little concerned. Like, that's what, 4 games, Dan, with knee soreness, and that doesn't really tell us anything. So I'm not going to do anything with it. Like, if I have him, I'm not trading him away because it's the low point of value. If I've got him, I'm not dropping him. Like, you sit there and go, I don't know. But it is worrying for sure.
I literally just traded him in industry pickup for Miles Turner.
Yeah, you did it before the injury, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
It was like I think he had just gotten ruled out with the first leg of that stint that he's been out. But I'm just concerned it could turn into like a Markelle Fultz situation where it starts out as a day-to-day thing. You don't get a clear prognosis, and then it kind of just goes on a pain management or swelling management, that type of thing. So definitely concerning. You got to wait this out, and I wish I had more information, but it seems like the fact that he's getting ruled out days in advance, I think, is pretty indicative that this is going to be a multi-week thing. It's already been one, so I think we're heading into 2 right now.
It's definitely concerning the fact that he's getting ruled out so far in advance. That's the thing that worries me. Like, I'm not thinking it's going to be as long as Fultz. We've got a question coming up about Fultz next, but it is definitely concerning. So David says, how much do we prioritize adding Fultz at the moment? He's in a 12-team points league. I'm debating dropping Clay for him. So you just drop that little bit there at the end of the sentence of dropping Clay. I'd be totally okay with moving on from Clay, to be honest, if you wanted to add Fultz in. Fultz is back partially practicing. He's questionable for the game on Friday. Is he a guy you rush to add? And again, we'll just tie this all back to the beginning of the show, like versus the Warriors guys, the Kumingas, Pajemskis, Moody's. They'll throw Šarić in there or Tari Eason. Like, where do you put Fultz with those guys? Like, he's going to start. They're not going to keep starting Anthony Black. So when Fultz's knee is fine, he will start. Like, how do you view him versus those guys who majority of are probably going to be bench players with uncertain long-term roles?
I think he's worth he's only 59% rostered in Yahoo League, so like he's pretty widely available in shallow league. So I would take a flyer and stash him if you have an IL spot. If you don't, I think he's one of the better waiver streamers that you could have out there. Like, if he's actually healthy and playing. The Orlando Magic, obviously their trajectory has changed completely. It's going to be really cool to see Fultz actually playing at the level that everyone else is, if he can stay healthy. I think that's the biggest frustration that I would have in rostering him, is like, will this knee injury pop up again next week? So hopefully the time off has been best served to get him that he can ramp up. He's going to have some conditioning and get back into the swing of things. And I think it's worth it. He was I had him pegged as like a top 90 guy this year. And I think all indications before the knee injury was that he could get there. He's got to stay healthy. So I would take a flyer on him. I think it's worth it in 12 team.
I think it is too, although it's not a guarantee that it's going to work out, but I think it is too.
No.
One show says, do voters in the MVP race take into account advanced stats or only regular averages and team wins? There's like 100 voters. So some of them would, and some of them won't. Like, I don't know all the voters. I know some of the voters, and I know some of them do, but I also know that some of them don't. So it's a mix, and that's exactly how that goes. This is also worth talking about. This question here from Nostalgia. It says, I'm combining my Derek White sell high for a Vassell buy low. Is that a wise equivalence? I'm talking about a wise equivalence. No, it's not. Like, that is not what. That's not what you do. That's not how any of that stuff works. Right? Let me again rephrase this. Buy lows and sell highs can be combined together quite often, but that's not what this is, because a Derek White is rolling top 20 at the moment. So when you're selling Derek White at the moment, what you're trying to get back is, let's say, top 40 player. Right? That's what I'd like to get back from Derek White. And if I don't, much like Coby White, we just keep it going. We just hold it and we enjoy it. And maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't, but we hold it. Whereas Devin Vassell is probably a 60 to 70 range player. And I guess if all things were equal, White and Vassell might end up in the same area. But Vassell's running at like 100, 110. So he's well down in his value. So then you try and throw someone that's way worse than that to get him and hope that he improves. You can combine buy lows and sell highs, but it's when we're talking about the buy low player being like a top 10 guy who's ranked 50th, and then the sell high guy is a 50th ranked player who's ranked 10th now, and you try to switch them over and hope that their things pass. Not this sort of scenario where they both could end up in the right spot, but they're like 100 ranking spots apart at the moment. That doesn't work, and that's just almost guaranteed to blow up in your face. Dan?
Yeah, I was actually thinking when you did the comp for Coby White, I was actually thinking Derek White would probably be actually a pretty interesting trade, because I don't know that Coby White's going to sustain the value that he's at right now. And I think Derek White obviously is playing ridiculously right now, but he's going to regress back a little bit. He's not going to be a top, I think he was top 10 last week, so top 20 over the last couple of weeks. I would buy low on Devin Vassell with the news that Keldon Johnson's likely going to be moved. But I don't know that I would sell. Yeah, I would sell Derek White if I could get a top 20, top 30 guy. Otherwise, I'm just going to hold, because I actually value Derek White over most guards because he plays defense. He gets you the blocks and the steals that don't typically come from that position. So I think he's actually a cheat code for the position. So I would take that as a factor into whoever I'm trying to acquire needs to do something similar to Derek White.
I'm glad that everyone now is finally coming around to my takes on Derek White from about 4 years ago. Do you think, Dan, that Derek White is the Celtics' second best player?
Ooh, it's between him and Porzingis probably.
Yeah.
But I would think for scarcity of the position of what he does, I think he's definitely in consideration for it. Like I'd rather I can find bigs that do what Porzingis does. I don't know that I can find guards that do what Derek White does. It's like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, him, and Kyrie's actually pretty good at defense too.
Kyrie gets a sneaky out of position. So does Fred VanVleet. Sneaky out of position blocks Kyrie. He hasn't really done it this season though, Kyrie, but he has in the past been a pretty good shot blocker. You did mention the Keldon Johnson thing, which was interesting. This is something, again, I've been calling for the Spurs to do for 2 years, because I just don't. He's not someone that you should build around. Although he's improved a lot this season.
Yeah.
But that brings me on, and no one's asked this question. Maybe someone can ask this question, then I can put up on the screen. What do you do in terms of fantasy stashing, trade rumors? Because my thing is ignore nearly all of it, because you might have 10% of it hit, and then when it does hit, it's a situation where weird stuff complicates the situation even further, and you've just sat on guys for too long. We hit February the 1st, and then you might want to sit on a couple of guys as things start to take place. Like last season, it became really obvious to me that you wanted to make sure you had Mark Williams, you wanted to make sure you had Zach Collins, because Pirtle and Mark Williams and Mason Plumlee were going to be dealt. Like, you could see that coming once we hit that end of January type period. But at this point of the season, we've got Levine might be traded, or Keldon Johnson's name's coming out. But it's too long to wait, and too many uncertainties to be able to do that. And I've also got this theory, Dan, is that if they're players that play the 2, the 3, or the 4, the way that the NBA works is all those positions are so interchangeable. Like if it's a point guard or a center moves, a center takes his spot. A point guard moves, a point guard takes his spot. But if a shooting guard or a small forward gets traded, like Keldon Johnson, you'll have then this guy, instead of playing 20 minutes, plays 25, and they shift up, and the power forward shifts down, and they all get like 4 or 5 different guys will get 5 extra minutes, and it doesn't amount to much. And that leads to that, well, this guy will definitely take that role, and it doesn't always work that way. So, roundabout question, what do you do about trade rumors now? Do you do anything in fantasy about it?
No, you kind of just got to wait how it kind of plays out. But at the same time, if I'm rostering people that are on the trade block, that concerns me because, the people that are disgruntled about winning, usually they try to redirect their trade destination to a contending team, which to me muddies waters for both parties in some cases. So people like Zach LaVine, I would be trying to trade if he wasn't injured right now. I would have been trying to trade him because I don't know that it's going to be greener for him on the other side going to a contending team potentially. Keldon Johnson, I have no idea what his trade market is in terms of like who's interested in him, but it sounds like he's a winning player that teams are coveting per the reports. That could just be his agent saying that. He's been on a losing franchise for quite his whole career.
Yeah,
so I don't know if I can say that.
The reason the franchise has been losing is because he's been a main player on it, and he doesn't. That's why. Hey, same as Zach LaVine, man. I just want to go somewhere I can win. Well, buddy, it might be because of you.
It could be you.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, these guys. Oh man, I just want to go somewhere where I can win some games. Yeah, okay, mirrors. Maybe buy one of those first. It is a situation. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I definitely try to. If you're in trade rumors, I would probably try to offload you before those things come to fruition. And December 15th is tomorrow, so that means that the trade eligible people now teams can start having those conversations. So I'll just be aware of it. I'm not doing anything in haste, like say oh okay, I gotta drop this guy because a rumor came out. Like no, wait for it to happen, react, but try to be as proactive as you can.
I will always. Tell guys on my channel is that once we hit towards the end of January, then I'll start to give you 4 or 5 names that maybe we look at to hold. I think last year there was 4 names, and 3 of them hit as solid trade stashes. But if you do it too early, it's pointless. And it's part of what we're doing with fantasy. Like there's a lot of work and a lot of work that we do, but a lot of work that people do with their lineups and making the decisions. Stop expending energy on shit that gives you such a minimal return that's almost impossible to predict. Like you could say, well, who's going to get traded and who they get traded for, and what does this work out? And if I hold this guy for this, like it's the return on it is not worth your energy level of investment in that. So just don't worry about it. Like you can't control it. You don't know when it's going to happen. You can't have any. It's like trying to predict. Well, maybe I'll do this because I think an injury might happen in 2 weeks. Can't do it. Impossible. Waste of your time and waste of your energy, and is likely just going to end up with a mistake. So just don't do it. Make it simple. Conserve your time and conserve your energy for things you can control. Dan, that is going to bring us to the end of the show. So again, thank you for coming on and fielding all of these tough questions. Tell people what is going on with you, writing, Yahoo, Roto World Podcast, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, you just named it all. So follow me on Twitter at Dan Titus and check out the Roto World Basketball Show every Wednesday. Me, Raphael Johnson, and Von Dalzell covering everything around fantasy basketball. So definitely tap in on Twitch. We are live on that too, 1 o'clock Eastern time every Wednesday. And yeah, check out my weekly article, The Playlist, at Yahoo Fantasy.
I've heard that on Twitch people are going topless now. Is that what you guys do too?
We haven't gotten that memo yet, but maybe sometime soon.
What you're supposed to say is, guys, you'll never know unless you tune in and find out. That's how you bring in an audience. Go. Thanks to Dan Titus. Go follow all of his stuff. Dan, I'm going to wrap this up. I'll see you later. Thank you for being on again.
Thanks, Josh. Have a good one.
Guys, we know what to do here. We go follow all Dan stuff, but also follow me across wherever you can. But if you are here on the old YouTube, we've hit the 70K. And now we're aiming for the next one. Just hit subscribe. It also just helps so you just always know when there's a show coming out and you never miss out on any action. Follow this podcast if you're listening on audio. And guys, we're done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.